So I wanted to take a look at the Travis Scott sneaker line so far, basically from sort of 2018, 2019, and how that sort of developed over time. And it's mostly sort of been working with Nike and Jordan brand. And just kind of what the overall sentiment is with regards to the sneakers themselves. And I've sort of based it up on ratings and sort of final thoughts as to where things are and where things are sort of going towards. So here is Travis Scott. He is an American rapper, singer, songwriter, and record producer. Multi-award winning and nominated for a lot of awards as well. So he's a very good rapper in my opinion. And basically, I do listen to his music quite a bit as well. And just a fan in general. I wouldn't say he's one of my top artists, but I do enjoy his music. And he has his own record label as well, so that's a thing that he's got under his belt. And it's probably like one of the few rappers who has his own sneaker line and also, I suppose, a successful sneaker line. So the first pair of trainers that was released, as far as I know, and I did sort of look this up, was the Nike Air Force One Low, which is obviously a Travis Scott version. And this one I've never, some of these trainers I've never seen in person, so I'm just basing my ratings upon the looks of them. And this was obviously in a white colorway with a sort of metallic swoosh, and it's not a bad sneaker, and it's a very, I suppose, safe bet in terms of a release and probably the start of the Nike partnership. And so for that reason I give it a 4. An Air Force One doesn't look bad, and this one I wouldn't say is a horrible looking trainer, but at the same time it's not wowing me. And then you got the Jordan 4 Retro UNC. This one I think is really nice actually, and basically when this was released, I'm sure like a lot of people will probably sort of overlook them, but I think they especially over time as well, and the last sort of 6 years, I think they've aged gracefully and still relevant till this day. And if I could go back in time and basically try and grab them, then obviously I would, and that's why I think they're a 5 out of 5. And then you got a second pair of the Travis Scott Air Force Ones, and this is in like the sail color. I mean, this is the start of the sort of experimentation of using sort of sail and sort of beige brownie colors from Travis Scott, which predominantly most of the sneakers are. And then this one again, I give it a 4 out of 5. It's still cool looking sneaker, and I wouldn't say no to it. And I think this is where things probably took a bit of turn for the worse. This is the Jordan 33. So I imagine this is, apart from say the Jordan 4 UNC, this was like another pair that Travis Scott was probably got assigned to basically promote and push forward. To me, I'm going to give it a 2. I'm just not really a big fan of this in general, just the way it looks. And for me, it's not one of those things that I can sort of see, anyone sort of wearing really, unless you're sort of on a basketball court, which at that point you're probably just better off buying just a standard GR version. And then this is where things get more interesting. So this is the Mocha pair, which is Jordan 1 highs, and most people should know about this particular pair, and I'm going to give it a 5. I just think they're awesome looking, and I think an original Jordan 1 that was released is just a classic really. It just looks really nice and probably starting to come into that sort of hype factor. And then you got the Jordan 6 Olive. I'm actually a big fan of these Jordan 6 Olives, and I think they're really nice. Just probably not one for me. They're more for sort of streetwear type wear, and probably more for a younger audience as well. So not one for me, but I do really like them, especially sort of seeing them on other people's feet. And then the next release from the Jordan 1 line is basically this Mocha. This is obviously considered an all-time classic. I think people weren't really into lows that much, and with the release of this one, I think that kind of changed people's opinions and started pushing Jordan 1 silhouette into the limelight. And that's why I've given it a 5 out of 5. And then after that, the Air Force One, another one, which from Travis Scott, so it's called Cactus Jack. And this was one of those ones where I just think it's very sort of average looking. I like the fact that they've tried to put a lot of detail and make it different, but at the same time it's just not doing it for me, and that's the reason why I've given it a 3. And then this is probably, in my eyes, a fire pair. I think most sort of SP Dunks, they don't tend to sort of go wrong because they have a lot of detailing on them and a lot of cool sort of features and different paneling and different types of material use as well. And I just think they just look amazing, especially this particular pair as well from Travis Scott. This SP Dunk Low is just one of the ones that are up there. And then you got the Air Max 270 React. I think with this one, I think it looks okay. I'm not a fan of the 270 model in general anyway. And this one, even though it's been sort of given its own sort of Travis Scott take on it, it's not one for me. And that's why I've given it a 3 out of 5. I think if I was to grab a pair of Air Max 270s, I'd probably just go for the standard version over this pair. But I do applaud, doing something different. And this is a pair that I ended up buying used, which I then sort of moved on because they were too big for me. And basically they just look really bulky on my feet, and like I said, it's probably more for a younger audience anyway, but the quality of them, I just couldn't beat them really. I think they were really, really nice in terms of the materials that I used, and even the little pockets on the side is just a cool and different touch to an Air Jordan 6. But again, I think it's more for a younger crowd, and that's why I've given it a 4 out of 5. I did really like them. I think the colourway is just a little bit difficult to match up. And the Jordan's High OG Fragments, I think this is a pair that I kind of regret not picking up. And this is, probably less so than the lows, but I still give it a 5 out of 5. It's kind of using that heritage colour blocking, which was a kind of sort of sample pair that was produced back in the 80s and never released. And this paneling, looks cool with this particular one because of the sort of reverse swoosh, and that's why I think I still give it a 5. I wouldn't say no if it came up to me in retail. And then this is probably, I think, in my eyes, the best Travis Scott pair. I'm a sucker for blue anyway, and white sneakers. So, and with the cream sort of Nike swoosh, I think it just looks amazing. And that's why I've given it a sort of 5 out of 5, and it's kind of using a similar sort of black toe colour blocking as well. So I regret not picking this pair up at the time when they were released, and I think I should have just bit the bullet and paid resale for them. And I think at that point they were quite sort of lower in price, and obviously what they are now. So, but that's probably my only regret in terms of buying a Travis Scott sneaker. And then you move on to the Air Max 1s, which is the brown and satin gold pair, which came out at the same time. And I have the satin gold version, and I think these are an amazing pair of sneakers, and they do enough different to a standard Air Max 1 where it's paying homage, but also doing kind of giving it more sort of Travis Scott vibes, and it gives you that sort of trail, sort of rugged, aggressive look on the sneaker. And you'll notice a lot of sort of small details on this, with like the almost sort of beaded swoosh, and then underneath the traction pattern as well is kind of more like a tire-like pattern compared to the original waffle style pattern, which is still sort of waffle, but it kind of gives you that more sort of tire type traction. But overall, I think it's a really, really nice trainer, and that's why I've given it a 5. And just don't think it was as successful as what they wanted it to be. And it was, in my eyes, produced more in larger quantities, because you could sort of grab these quite easily, even on the resale market at a reasonable price, especially the satin gold pair, because it was the least popular one, but in my opinion looks better. And then this is where I think where things started to go wrong, and this is the Air Trainer 1 in the wheat and grey haze colourway. And I'm a big fan of the Trainer 1 silhouette, and I actually thought I'd really like these, and I did have both versions, which I then sort of sold on. And the reason why I didn't like them is the colours on the hair were just really difficult to match up. I think either pair, whether you had the grey pair or the wheat pair, they're just really, really difficult to match up with. The wheat pair had almost like a pinky tone to it, and the heel with the sort of zip going around it is just pretty useless really. You can't really put anything in there. It was just more there for aesthetics. And just like I said, I'm a fan of Trainer 1s, but I think with this one they kind of took a bit of a wrong turn, and I think that's why I've just given it a 3. And again, this was similar to the Air Max 1s where they were producing sort of large quantities, but I think it's a combination of the trainer not being that great, and the silhouette itself in terms of how it looks not being that great, and also to do with the fact that they were producing large quantities and people didn't want them. And I think the colorway just didn't work on this one. And I think the actual design cues on there are pretty cool. And then you got the reverse Mocha. This is another pair that I kind of regret that I didn't sort of pick up at the time. And like I said, even on the resale market, they were quite, in my size anyway, around sort of the £500-600 mark. And again, probably should have just bit the bullet and grabbed them. But obviously now they've sort of spiked up and sort of almost double that price. But still think it's a 5 out of 5 sneaker, even though it's sort of playing it safe and just following the Jordan 1 line that Travis Scott has. It's still, a cool looking colorway, and with the Jordan 1, you can't really go wrong wearing a pair of these, so I think it's cool. And then you got the Black Phantoms. I think this one is nice, but I don't think it's a must-have. I think when you see these in person, they look a lot nicer than seeing them online, because I think what puts most people off is just the entire black colorway. But when you see it in person, you can kind of sort of see the different paneling, the different types of textures that are used on there, and the different, almost sort of different types of blacks. And I'm a big fan of contrast stitching as well, so I think it's a 4 out of 5 for me. I think if I've got a pair for retail, I'd definitely give them a 5. And then you got the Olives. I think this is another pair that I should have just grabbed at the time as well, because they were sort of floating around the £500 marks, especially when they were released on the resale market, and probably should have grabbed a pair then, but not now. I think now they're sort of pricing too high, and they've just sort of upped even more so over the last sort of 6 months. But this one I still give it a 5 out of 5. It's just really cool. And then the Air Force One Utopia. This is basically just plastered a really simple, almost sprayed on sort of logo on the back of the heel, and with the sort of promoting the Utopia LP. But for me, it's just one of those ones where it's just played it too safe, and they've just basically grabbed an Air Force One off the market and just not done too much to it, and it's very lazy, and they also charged a premium for this as well, so that's why I've given it a 2 out of 5. And then this is a strange one for me, releasing this as a golf version. I can only assume Travis Scott has an affinity with golf, or Jordan brand wanted to sort of promote their golfing line more, and that's why they use Travis Scott for it. But it's still a clean looking sneaker, and I like the fact that it's sort of semi waterproof as well. But it's more of a 4 out of 5 sneaker in my eyes. And then again, this is where I think they've gone wrong, and the whole marketing campaign around this as well. And Travis Scott and John McEnroe just felt a bit forced. But the Mac Attack is quite a cool shoe, but just not really one for me. And I had a pair of these. I think it was a social status version, and just found them a bit too tight on foot, and just didn't like the shape of them really. They just look a bit odd, especially the toe cap area. And that's why I've given them a 3. Again, it just feels a bit of a lazy collab as well. And then the Jordan Jumpman Jack T-Rexx. I actually really like the look of these, and I was a fan even when they were first sort of released in terms of the pictures. But for me now, looking at them and seeing a lot of reviews online, I can sort of say they're not up to par really. I think for me it's one of those ones where they're charging quite a lot of money for them, which is like $200 or £200, and they were very, very limited, so no one could actually grab them. And then also the fact that they don't have any sort of tech in there. So when I saw those reviews, they're basically sort of saying, oh yeah, I really like them, but they were uncomfortable to wear. And for me, that's like a bit, in this day and age, I think there should be sort of sneakers that should actually be comfortable. They should be sort of wearable. And to go back a step and for these to not be as comfortable as say a Jordan 1 just speaks kind of volumes really of like where we are in terms of sort of promoting sneakers and how they sort of develop sneakers. I think if you're wearing it for sort of lifestyle, they should use at least some sort of nicer tech than what they've got in there at the moment, which just seems to be a flat base with a insole sort of stuffed in there. And for me that just feels a bit odd to me. And then you got the University Red colour, and this one was even more limited and just sort of released on the Travis Scott website. And this one I don't think it looks as nice either, and that's why I've given it a 4 out of 5. I think for me, again, it's one of those silhouettes. I think maybe if I see it in person, I can probably go, okay, this is really nice, but the more and more I sort of see of the fact that they're limited, they don't have they're not easily accessible, and basically there's not really much tech in there to make you feel sort of comfortable on foot. Just don't think it's worth the money in my opinion, but they look cool. And then the Jordan 1 Canary, I actually really like the look of these, and I think for me it's one of those ones where I think maybe if I have them in hand I might sort of change my mind, but seeing the photos online I think they actually look really cool and really different. And even though again it's using the same Jordan 1 formula that Travis Scott has been doing for the last sort of 4 or 5 years, it's still, you know, a cool looking sneaker, and you know, I don't think these will sort of ever go out of fashion really, and that's why with this one they're giving it a 5. So I started looking at sort of the overall sentiment of like the Travis Scott sneaker line, and I basically looked at all the different scores over the sort of years of the different trainers that were released, and sort of categorized them into years and just gave them an average. And as you can sort of see, I think you know, 2017 it sits around the sort of just over the sort of 3.8 mark, and you know, near enough going to 4, and that's sort of out of 5, and that sort of implies to me that, you know, it's starting off at a nice sort of sentiment really, with you know, with people, and people being on board with like the Travis Scott line. And then you get into like 2018, and that's when sort of, you know, more of the nicer sort of trainers started releasing, like the Jordan 4 UNC, and I think people were sort of really started to get on board with the Travis Scott, and I think he started developing a lot more hype anyway because of the sort of albums that were releasing at the time. And I think the 2019 and 2020, that, you know, he had some good sort of sneakers then as well, and they, you know, were kind of basically released at the time where I think the Jordan brand in general was gaining a lot of popularity. And I think in 2021 that sort of continued, and I think the sentiment was, you know, like that was built up for the last sort of 3 years, started to sort of build up to almost like a crescendo, and I think at that point you couldn't really put sort of foot wrong, and the, you know, the fragments that released were just you know, an all-time classic in my opinion. And then you kind of move on to 2022 where you got the Trainer 1 and the Air Max 1 and also the Olive Pair, and I think with those ones, you know, it kind of are really, you know, pretty nice and stuff as well, so it started sort of dropping off at that point. And then in 2023 kind of releasing sort of the Utopia album and sort of promoting the different sort of Nike silhouettes, I think that's when it started taking a bit of a downturn really, with the Air Force 1 and also with the Mac Attack. So I think people were starting to sort of feel, you know, this isn't, you know, what Travis Scott is sort of known for, and maybe you know, there's too much sort of publicity, and where they've just sort of rinsed out a lot of the you know, sneakers and just putting the Travis Scott brand on them rather than actually making an effort. And I think that's where they started to sort of go wrong. And basically in 2024 I can sort of see that climbing again and people being more into it. Obviously the Jordan line in itself isn't as popular as it once was, but people still sort of, you know, want that, especially in the US. And you know, the release of the Canaries, and whatever you say about the T-Rexx trainers, you know, people still want them because they're limited and selling for a lot of money. And then I think, you know, there's some other pairs coming out, such as the Sharkidons, which I'm not too much of a big fan of, but I think, you know, it seems to have sort of good reception. And then you've still got sort of some of the Jordan 1s that are coming out from Travis Scott, which, you know, all look really nice as well. So that kind of sort of implies that 2024 is going to be sort of another sort of good year, and maybe going even into sort of 2025. But it is kind of relying on mostly sort of the Jordan 1 formula. So I'm not sure if they're going to be releasing, you know, sort of other lines of or silhouettes of sneakers, but I don't see that happening too much over the course of sort of 4 or 5 years. I think, you know, there'll be probably another 2-3 new silhouettes from Travis Scott, but it all depends on how the Sharkidons do and how the T-Rexes do in the long term. So with the final thoughts, so is Travis Scott still sort of relevant? I mean, it's been going on for like 6, 7, near enough sort of 8 years really in the sneaker game, and basically released, like, I suppose 24 sneakers that were, I suppose, more GR releases rather than, you know, sort of friends and family. And I've kind of sort of discounted the friends and family sneakers, and you know, that's quite a lot really. And I think most of those sneakers are, you know, selling for a good amount of money, and also are really nice sneakers at the end of the day, you know, and basically definitely worth grabbing, you know, at least a bunch of them. And if you look at the scores overall, like in terms of, these are all my scores that I've kind of basically labelled them at, and if you take the average across all of them, I mean, it's a 4.15, and that's not really that bad actually when you consider it. So I think, you know, Travis Scott's sneaker line has done a really good job in general, and hasn't put too much wrong. And I think 2023 was probably a low point. And yeah, so overall, you know, 2023 was a low point for Travis Scott's sneaker line, and I think it was mainly due to just basically sort of cashing in on the hype, really, and hopefully that doesn't sort of continue. And the other thing I think is kind of going against the Travis Scott line at the moment is basically the sneakers are sort of unattainable for the majority of fans, which basically means that, you know, a lot of younger people who are interested in these sneakers just aren't able to grab them unless they're sort of paying a lot of money for them, which kind of sort of feels a bit weird, really. And obviously there's sort of allegations around backdooring, and a lot of sort of backdooring with sort of Travis Scott trainers in general. I don't condone it, but at the same time I understand it. Or, you know, if you can basically buy at cost for $100 and, you know, you're selling them at $500, it's kind of like, why wouldn't you? But again, that all comes at a price, and the sentiment on that just overall, you know, it just starts to you know, become one of those things where people, you know, fans sort of despise that, really. So I think they have to sort of play that carefully. But, you know, backdooring seems to be a common occurrence in general in the sneaker market. And also I think there's a lot more Jordan 1s, which I'm surprised about, and I thought they were kind of going to stop. And I don't mind it, actually. If I can sort of means that I have more of a chance of grabbing a pair, then obviously that's cool. But again, I think they're still going to be sort of quite limited. So, you know, we'll see what happens, I guess, with that one. And then the Nike partnership is going to sort of continue. So like I mentioned earlier, the Sharkadon new model, I'm not a really fan of it too much, but it might be quite sort of successful as well. And like I said, you know, 2024 looks to be back on track and business as usual for Travis Scott. And I think, you know, Travis Scott's not going anywhere because of the fact that I think most of these sneakers are sort of revered and, you know, have sort of good scores. And maybe they're, you know, like I said, relying heavily on the Jordan 1 silhouette. But at the same time, sometimes, you know, you don't need to be sort of too crazy and too out there and doing, like, you know, like new things all the time, and just sort of building on, you know, what's successful, I guess. However, I would like to see more Travis Scott collabs with, I suppose, different Jordan models, but, you know, I don't know how successful they'll be. But, you know, obviously he's tried his luck at a Jordan 6 and also a Jordan 4, but Jordan 1 seems to be the sort of go-to pretty much for everyone at the moment. I would like to see a Jordan 3 personally from Travis Scott, and maybe even a Jordan 14, because I think that does sort of fall within that sort of aesthetic as well. But, you know, that's my opinion. But overall, I still think he's you know, a really good artist, and I do like the sneaker line in general. And like I said, the scores don't lie, really. I think, you know, overall, it's you know, the sneaker line is very, very good.